good afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff Morton, the host of this particular podcast. It's called Let's Talk About It. On the Spotify, it's called the Let's Talk About You podcast because I couldn't use the same name. Unfortunately, I didn't stop to think about all of the Let's Talk About It podcasts that are out there. Too many to count. So, but this is my show. This is why, this is what I do every Sunday afternoon live. And the reason I do this, somebody asked me, Jeff, you don't really have a lot of listeners. You don't have a lot of people tagging in. That's not what this is about. This is about me bringing the average person who has a story to tell, has a business to share, or has something that they're doing to help people. That's what this is all about. It's an opportunity for you to come on here and talk about what you do that benefits other people, and or share your story. That's what this is all about. I'm not looking to be, the podcast of the century. That's not why I do this, okay? But anyway, I am still looking for sponsors, and if you have a short little spot that you would like to run during the podcast, please contact me. Carol, run my email address over the screen, the ticker screen here during the program. So that's what this is all about. And I got to tell you, I'm out of town next week. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do the podcast next Sunday because I'll be in New York just for a couple of days to the weekend. And then I'll be back. So I'm not really sure yet if there's going to be a show. I have to kind of logistically see if that'll happen as I head back to my hometown for a few days. I met a guy named Dan Guay, and we were talking about processing credit card fees. And I have always been of the mindset that why am I paying for these credit card fees? And I often think about, going into typically an Asian restaurant or an Asian a grocery store or a little corner store. They all have sitting on the counter, if you use your debit or credit card, it's 35 cent, 25 cent extra charge. I never have a problem paying that. It's reasonable to me that the business owner not have to incur those debts. And lo and behold, I meet this guy named Dan Guay who has the same mindset. Dan, come on in. I'd like to introduce you to the audience.
Yes,
this
hi,
is
Jeff.
Dan Guay, everybody. He's the guy who does adaptive payment solutions. And we're going to talk the whole hour about why he started this business and what it's all about. Dan, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
Yes, sir. Now, before we get started, why don't we just take about 5 minutes and give the audience, whoever listens or whoever watches later on, a little bit about you. Who are you, Dan?
Yes. Let's see. I'm married, been 30 years, April 8th, 3 daughters, 24, 21, and 12. I've been a self-employed business owner since 2002. My last W-2 job was in 2001 when I worked for Master Spas. I was the IT manager there, and just kind of started looking them up on the internet, started seeing that they didn't look very good, that they had, you couldn't find them. I spent 60 hours a week trying to figure out how to get them up on the search engines and kind of do things back in the Alta Vista days, and was starting to be successful at that. Then when we had our daughter and our oldest daughter, and we, out every vacation was to visit up here in the Northwest when our family had moved up here, and we just kind of wanted to be closer to the family. So we decided to sell our house, moved out here, and one thing led to another. This was when the stock market was down 75%. I didn't have a degree, put together a business card. It was Haymeadows Design because that was kind of what you had to do back in the day before there were actually SEO companies. Signed up a large client within the first couple months. And thank the Lord for that. Just really started to take off from there. I had a percentage of sales with them, and one thing led to another. I ended up doing this for myself for 22 years. Some things in recent years, COVID, my mom passing away, Google making things tougher, social media being more popular, just kind of led to needing to find something else. And that's when I ran into a credit card processing. And for 20 years, anytime anyone wanted to pay with a credit card, it always kind of made me cringe. And I was doing SEO for this one company, and I said, I want to sell this for you guys, and started to sell it for them. And that ended up turning into kind of doing it for myself. So,
Well, you mentioned that you moved up here. From where did you move?
from Fort Wayne, Indiana. So we
Oh,
lived
really?
in Indiana for 6 years, born and raised Southern California, Indiana for 6 years, and have lived here for 24 years now.
So I've been to Indiana a few times. So I didn't know you. I thought it was all California, but you were in Indiana. I mean, were you raised down there for the most part?
Yeah, born and raised in Southern California.
Okay.
And then jobs took us out to Indiana, and then yeah. So
it was family that brought you to the Pacific Northwest?
Yes.
Okay.
And
All
don't tell
right.
people in Southern California, weather's pretty good out here. When it's nice, it's nice.
It's beautiful when it's nice out here and you don't have
Isn't it?
volcanoes erupting and things of that nature.
Right.
But anyway, so you've been basically entrepreneurial for most of your adult life, and you've had a couple of businesses. Adaptive Payment Solutions came about how? You just decided, were you doing credit card processing?
I was for about 10 months. Started kind of, doing that, signed up a couple clients underneath my belt, and then just one thing led to another. I kind of wanted to do it on my own. And I wasn't expecting that. I just, that's what I do.
Well, explain to people what that means. Credit card processing, debit card processing. We'll get into some of the why, and then we'll get into some of the discussion about all of that. So what does that all mean to the merchant?
Okay. Basically, and it's really payment solutions. It's providing a way for merchants to get paid. You can get paid through cash, credit card, ACH, wire, all sorts of different ways. But primarily, I sell the credit card payment systems. There's point of sale systems. There's just standard terminals. There's virtual terminals, and just really out there, trying to figure out a way to get money from someone. You provide a service or a product, and someone wants to pay you, and we go in and figure out, sometimes it's just one way, or other times they want, a multitude of ways.
I don't think the average person realizes how those credit card fees that the merchant has to take care of multiply. Can you give an idea of how that works?
Okay. Like, let's say a standard auto repair shop might have like 3 or 4 bays. And if they're busy all month long, they're going to run about $100,000 worth of credit card processing to pay for people that need their cars repaired. That's going to total $3,300, $3,000 a month. We'll just we'll round down. That's $36,000 a year that they're paying just to run credit cards and take credit cards and process credit cards.
To do business. So when you hand your credit card to a merchant, not only is he charging you, but he's being charged as well.
Correct.
So I had one guy, I was talking to somebody about all this. $100,000 a year is where that was their baseline for credit card purchasing.
Wow.
And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, they're obviously making good money doing this, but what could they do with $100,000 if they didn't have to pay Visa, or they didn't have to pay whoever? Right. So now you and I got into this conversation, and I was like, for all the years that I was running companies, taking credit cards and whatnot, I hated having to pay for the merchant. I hated having to pay for the fees. And that's kind of where you and I clicked, because you felt the same way. And I suppose that's why you started the business. So tell us educate me. Tell me what goes on.
So, basically the customer that's paying has the choice. I'm going to pay with a card or I'm going to pay cash. In years past, it's always been the merchant pays to process that credit card. Well, now we have the option where, let's say it's $1,000 bill. You run into your terminal, $1,000. You turn it and show the customer it's $1,000.40 to run the credit card. So either the customer says, I'm going to pay $1,040. That turns the fee back to the customer, the person that's actually getting the airline miles, getting all the perks for running the credit card, for using their credit card. And so they now have that option of, oh, maybe I need to pull out my checkbook or pay cash. And it puts the onus back on the customer to decide who's paying that processing fee. And that's honestly where it should be. They're the ones getting all the credit card, all the perks. And
you're not gonna make a lot of people happy with that statement, but it's true. I mean, why should I go into business and pay for everything?
Right.
You know, if I'm providing a service to the customer, shouldn't they be paying me?
Right. One of the first clients I signed up was a tow truck company. Within 45 days, they added it to their auto repair center. And within 6 months, they sent me a referral to another tow truck company, all because they're realizing they're not getting complaints. They're not getting, people are used to paying that fee. And it's the landscape is changing.
Right.
And I think it's changing towards the customer making that choice. And that's why I got excited about this, because, back in the day, it was like, hey, SEO was a big thing. And I see that changing in the credit card processing field to where I'm pretty excited about it, because, people are still selling this the old traditional way of everybody just undercut the other person. And and then we'll increase rates now merchants under this format don't have to worry about what they're being charged, the statement fee, the PCI fee, all of those fees can go away. And all they have to do is just focus on, all right, I'm getting taken care of. Customer makes the choice now.
So what is you've given me a list of things that I certainly don't understand a lot of this, but I'm going to kind of list off a few things and you can kind of tell me what that means. And you also have some slides. Just let me know when you want to stick a slide up there. We'll put it on screen. What is dual pricing? What does that mean?
That is where I talked about the $1,000 or $1,040. So you have one of the ways that technically, like let's say you have a clothing, you could price your clothing as a cash price or a card price. What we've done is we have terminals now that will actually calculate all the regular prices and then display a card price and a cash price. So basically dual pricing is that card price or a cash price. And so you're giving the customer the choice. There was a phase when it went into cash discount, you'd call it cash discount, but dual pricing is kind of a little bit more kosher way of saying it now.
We've got a person in the chat here. He has a question. It says, what's the difference? He's asking, what's the difference in charging more, factoring in the fees in advance versus having the customer pay it as an add-on at point of service?
That is a great question. I'm going to use, we had to upgrade our deck to the non-wood, what's that fake wood called?
Yes. I don't know what it's called, but I know what you're talking about.
Yes. So we went out to Yelm, a little bit less taxes, and little mom and pop shop, which we like to support. And it was a $17,000 deck. It's a large deck, $17,000 deck. So I asked the company, what do you guys charge extra for credit card? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, then I'm going to use credit card. Because basically what that company has done is they've added 3% to everything they sell. And so by you not using your credit card, you're actually paying for everybody else that's using their credit card. And so I could have written a check, brought cash, except I would have been losing out on their markup because they're marking up all of their product. And so that's the difference. You're actually making it, it's a more level playing field by giving the customer the choice at the time of sale rather than beforehand.
Okay, so I think that answers this question. Okay, so what's the difference between a credit card charge fee and a debit card? Is there any difference when using one or the other?
In this situation, no. It's card price or cash price.
Okay.
So it's going to be the same scenario. Debit cards cost a little bit less to run because there's usually not as many perks. There are perk debit cards now, but they usually cost a little bit less to run as an overall average. And so, when I first started doing this, I started selling surcharge, and surcharge basically only adds a fee to credit cards. So what ended up happening was a lot of people were switching to debit card, and merchants were still getting charged $300 or $400 a month, let's say, depending on volume. I was trying to make that zero. And with dual pricing, you actually now there's no option to switch over. And so I've really kind of gotten on the bandwagon of the dual pricing instead of the surcharge, because surcharge still costs the merchant, and it doesn't make sense. It makes a lot more sense to give the customer the option.
Well, when I had my businesses, and I would take the credit cards or the debit cards. This is a while ago. I could have marked up what I was. For example, I'm in the restaurant business. A person now is paying $10, $12 for a hamburger. Back when I was doing this, that wasn't the case. But when they handed me a debit card or a credit card, I could have added $1 to the charge and just did it that way. How do you make a living doing it any other way? Where's your service at?
Right. The service is in the terminal automatically doing it. We also take the fee out and pay the fee, pay all the interchange rate. So basically you're getting your $12 is a true $12. You're not $13 paying the income on $13. You're actually incoming $12. Talk to your own accountant, but we're taking away all of the costs of the merchant having to deal with credit cards.
Okay.
Deal with the fees.
I kind of get that.
Okay.
Then why do we need you in a business? What purpose do you serve?
By providing the terminals.
Okay.
By providing the service to connect to the interchange, to the credit cards, to be able to connect to the services that require you to take the credit cards, allow you to take the credit cards.
Are they okay with this? Because that's not the way business was done. They were getting the fees. I guess I'm kind of confused as to how does let's say MasterCard, how do they get paid the fee?
Oh, they still get paid the fee. Our fee, so let's say we take 4% away. Their part is going to still be in the 2% range of what the interchange rate to process the credit card, the banks, the everything else. Sometimes perk cards or American Express cards are more than that. And so they're still pulling their fees out of that amount. It just gets processed through the ISO and ICE through other organizations. But MasterCard and Visa are still getting their fees.
So, okay, so, I hadn't thought about any of this until we started having this conversation, okay?
Right.
In the past, whenever somebody got a fee, I had to hire a processing company to come in and process their card, okay?
Right.
What makes you different than those processing companies?
You're still hiring me as the processing company.
Okay, so, you're basically just doing what I've always done.
Exactly. With the addition that you can do dual pricing as an option. It is the same way you've always done it. It's just instead of you paying the fee, that fee gets paid, and then we process the fee after the fact or during the fact. It's just a different way of looking at where that fee is happening. And actually, I just did a blog post about that last week, because there was some confusion about how does it all process? It all processes the exact same way as it always has. It's just a matter of perception. When 3% is already added into your price, or 3% is added after the fact, it's still the processing fee is being pulled.
So rather than having to hire a processing company, which is what you have to do,
right?
You became a processing company. I'm trying to see what sets you apart from what you were doing. And perhaps I'm just not catching on.
Right.
Maybe I'm not catching on here.
I am an independent sales agent for independent sales organizations for Payarc and Solero. And so they are the ones that provide access to processing the credit cards for me, for you. So I go out there and I provide the systems and everything, and then you process your transactions, and that feeds through the credit card terminal that then talks to Visa, MasterCard, talks to your banks, runs through independent sales organizations. It's all there's a lot of fingers in the pot, so to speak. But you end up being able to process the card and getting cash from your customer. It gets into your account the next day.
So you're independent.
Just like it always would.
Yeah, but you're an independent broker, so to speak.
So to speak, yes.
Okay. Well, that's who I used to hire back in the day, was independent brokers who could do all of this. I guess What I'm trying to figure out is, how are you doing this as your own business if you're representing these other companies? You're feeding them.
I'm feeding them. I'm promoting. I've put together my own website, my own branding to go out there and market myself as a company to sell this as an independent sales agent.
And how many of there are you?
A lot.
Okay, so this is where I was confused. For some reason, I had it in my mind, Dan, and forgive me.
No worries.
But you were doing something new and out of the box.
Right.
That's what I was thinking all this time.
Well, no, dual pricing and cash discount, those, to try and take away the fee from the customer or from the merchant, it's grown in the last 5 to 6 years, I would say. But it's still very young in its infancy. Most people haven't heard of it, and that's why we're here,
Okay, and
you hadn't heard of it.
That's the key. That's the key component. The merchant's no longer paying that fee.
Correct.
Okay, that's what spiked my interest in when we were having this conversation, because I've only ever known the merchant to pay the fee.
Right.
And that's not happening now. When people use adaptive payment solutions and they come to you, you basically exonerate them from having to pay that fee, even though the fee is still collected. It's collected in a different way through the customer base.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
now we're back on track here.
All right. You want to do that first slide?
Which one is that?
The merchants wave goodbye with the big old smiley face.
Here you go, buddy.
There you are.
All right, so
And
go ahead and explain that.
Yeah, it's exactly what we've been talking about. So, merchants should not have to be paying credit card fees.
My sister's in the chat, and she writes, that's what I was going to ask, because if he is like a broker, then there's no difference. And so she says, I'm glad he cleared that up. So, okay, good. So now the whole purpose of this was the merchant not paying the fee. And you've got this here slide to talk about. Go ahead.
Right. And through dual pricing, your customers get to decide cash or card, and you get to keep profits either way. More of your profits either way.
Okay, good.
Instead of 3%, instead of having to charge everybody because they might use a credit card. Let's say you're in a competitively priced industry, which really any industry is competitively priced these days, right? You want to be able to keep your prices as low as possible. You show that lower price, you give that lower price, and then you say, okay, cash or card. And you are able to do that through this dual pricing setup.
So checks and cash are basically the same thing. We're just literally talking about credit cards and debit cards. Okay, so having said that, now the merchant no longer sees in his P&L a $300 or $400 or $4,000 surcharge to him for processing credit cards.
Correct.
That's nice.
His EBI TDA is higher. I don't even know what that means. I had a client that I did SEO for. EBITDA, equity. I don't know. I forget, but it's better on your income statement, on your P&L, on everything, right?
So how does the customer react to this? Because one of the things that you sent to me, the consumer perspective, how customers react to seeing dual pricing in action, why transparency in pricing improves customer trust, the psychology behind customers choosing cash over card. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Just that I've been doing this for a year and a half, and I've yet to hear of anybody having a complaint. I mean, literally, it's like I'm getting word of mouth customers, not any negative reviews, any negative anything, because people are getting used to it. It's happening. People are trying to do it on their own, and typically they're not doing it right. I've walked into another auto repair shop, and it's like, you could get in trouble for doing it the way you're doing it. There's technicalities and ways that you're supposed to do it correctly. I don't want to get into those details because that's, that's why you need to come to me. But, okay. It is legal. It's perfectly legal in all 50 states. Surcharge, there's some states that actually it's not legal. But dual pricing and that is legal in all 50 states.
So what are some of the common myths or misconceptions?
Well, that customers are going to complain. If you have, and that's part of my training with merchants is that the reason they're doing it. I want to keep my prices lower. I don't want to increase prices for everybody. Give you the choice to pay that fee now or not. Instead of, we're trying to make our prices as low as possible. And typically, I'm working with mom and pop shops anyway, and local businesses that really have a connection to the community. And, I'm not really after the large franchises. It's really the mom and pop shops that, are doing good business, but they also, usually have a little bit more of a loyal following and really have a customer facing one-on-one with them. And it's easy to explain that I'm trying to keep my prices as low as possible, and this is one way I'm doing it. And then you can choose to pay the fee after or not.
So, and I'm glad you brought that up because there's, you got You got Amazon wants to park itself in neighborhoods just like 7-Elevens did. I read a thing about that once where Amazon was wanting to be the 7-Eleven in the middle of a neighborhood,
Right.
which would kind of just shut down all the small mom and pop businesses, a lot of the independent owners, and we see that happening. Okay, and they already have their whole system in place as to how to take as much money from you as possible. So you're saving these smaller businesses a considerable amount of money because they no longer have to pay these fees, but they do have to turn around and pay you.
The merchants don't. My goal is to make it cost the merchants zero.
Explain that. Explain that, because you're providing a service. How do you do that?
I do that because that part that they're charging the customer, so the customer chooses, am I going to use my card where I get perks, everything else, and I'm going to pay a higher price? I'm going to pay the card processing fee myself as a customer versus the merchant paying the card price. That merchant paying the card price is where I'm getting the income from now instead of the merchant. And so the merchant is the one that is getting saved in this scenario.
So who pays you?
My upper ups, the independent sales organization, Solero and Payarc. When I sign up a customer under them, when I sign up a merchant and the merchant processes the cards, those fees go to pay the Visa and MasterCard, and then there's a split on the rest.
Okay, good. So your income is not coming from the customer who's using a credit card or debit card. It's coming from the client, from the company that you signed the client up to use the services, and they're no longer paying the fees. So when I go into a mom and pop restaurant, they say on the counter, 35 cents to use your credit card. Okay.
Right.
Which kind of irritates me, but I pay it. But if they're using your system, Adaptive Payment Solutions, and still charging to use the credit card to the person standing on the other side of the cash register, how is that happening?
That I just signed up a restaurant last week. A friend of mine just opened a shop in Lakewood, my neighbor. Basically if it's a $30, $30, they're going to add a 4% fee to that $30 to then process the credit card, or you could pay cash to the restaurant. And so the merchant is not having to pay just to process your frequent flyer miles.
Well, if the merchant is charging a 4% interest, and they're using your system, they're making money that they don't really. They're not. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? They're not getting charged to use the card anymore.
Correct.
But they're still asking for 4% because the customer used the card.
Because somebody has to pay the interchange fees. Somebody has to pay the Visa and the MasterCard to process those credit cards. Now we're passing the fee along to the customer paying that if they're going to choose to pay with a credit card.
Okay.
Instead of the merchant having to eat that cost. At the grand scheme of things, right? Customers have been paying it. It's just merchants increase the cost of all their products to do it, even to people that pay cash.
They can separate that out.
People who pay cash lose.
People who pay cash
lose in this scenario.
Why?
Because in the scenario where the merchant pays for the credit card processing, what's the merchant going to do?
He's going to add
3%.
Oh, so anybody paying cash is being charged basically the markup.
Right.
Oh, well, that's not fair. And I understand why that. Now I understand what you're saying. So
Okay.
when you use cash, you're paying the markup that's set in place for every payer.
Exactly. I need to ask questions of you.
Ah.
This is helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so explain to I'm going to take a back seat here
Okay.
because my brain is trying to figure out a couple of things, and I think you've done that, and I don't want to embarrass myself here. Give us the whole scenario. I'm a new business. I've got
Okay.
let's say I'm doing parts, and I don't take cash, which is happening too. I'm strictly credit card and or debit card. Period.
Right.
Okay. How then walk me through how your system helps that person
Okay.
who's no longer taking cash or checks.
Okay. Um, so do you have to take a back seat or can I ask you?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Open
Well,
discussion.
open discussion. Um, Somebody's paying that fee,
Right.
right?
The
And
customer
so
is.
in the scenario of that, the customer is going to pay the fee on a credit card or debit, and it's they're going to pay the card price, right?
Okay.
Or they're going to pay a card price. So you only have a card price. We need to be. I would suggest that to keep it legal, we need to offer a cash or check or ACH.
That was my
But
question.
there needs to be an option.
That was the heart of my thing.
Right.
Okay.
Because you need to give an option to avoid the card price, basically, to make it legal.
Okay. So in the instance where people don't do that because they're no longer taking cash, then it becomes an illegal transaction to mark it up.
Correct.
That's interesting.
Correct.
So what do you do with that customer who can't, or that merchant who can't do that?
I say you got to take cash or check. Otherwise, I can't help you
How'd you run
because I
into
don't
that?
think I haven't yet. One
Is
thing
this
that I've actually thought about, though, and I'm going to go ahead and say it because it'd be a far cry and dream to be able to do this, but Winco. Winco takes only debit.
right?
And in my scenario, or cash, in my scenario, they could actually take credit cards or debit cards, add the 4%, and give a cash discount, give a dual pricing scenario where you can pay $100 worth of groceries or you pay $104 worth of groceries on card. And so they wouldn't have to say only debit card. They could actually take credit cards at Winco. And, I know that there's people, I mean, you look on reviews online. I've actually sent a couple letters to Winco and my, dream big, because I think that Winco could actually take and be interested. They're self-employed. I mean, they're employee owned. They could actually take credit cards on my scenario and debit cards with the option. And people that shop, if you look, anyways, the reviews, people have left Winco because they didn't realize, oh, I only had my credit card. So they've done all their shopping. They loaded up their cart. They've
I've
gotten a
seen it
checkout.
happen. I've actually
Right.
seen it happen.
Right.
For anyone listening to the program, Winco's a local grocery store here in Pacific Northwest. I don't know if they're in California, but they're a employee-owned businesses, and I've never understood why they didn't take credit cards.
Right.
Because
Right.
they don't.
I know. And they could do this. And what happens now? They have to actually go put all those food items away. They have to restock their shelves. Maybe some of the stuff has been in the cart for too long before they realize it's spoiled. They've lost items. it's costing them, and they have an upset customer that leaves them negative reviews.
Do you know why they don't take credit cards? Have you ever?
I think it's the cost. I think it's cost.
The cost of processing.
It's strictly because it costs a lot of money. That's to why some businesses don't.
The simple solution to me is to just add. Well, you can't add a surcharge.
Right.
So explain that.
You can't add a surcharge to debit cards. You can only add a surcharge to credit cards. So they could do that and still offer the debit card as cash, the cash price. Although they're still paying large amounts of money, 1.5% or more to run their debit card transactions. So they could run the surcharge, but in the grand scheme of things, with their kind of volume, I could do a 3% dual pricing scenario to where it's okay, dual pricing. Now they have, they just present the two different options of prices, card price and cash price.
Why would anyone not listen to this?
I know. There's a local cabinet shop here in Puyallup that does cash only. And I'm like, why would you be cash only? Oh, that's the way we've been for years. It's like, okay, but you could take credit cards and debit cards at no cost to you. Why not give the option?
They're afraid of the charges.
Right.
Or could there be other reasons like fake credit cards, which would be a minimal reason? I mean, that would be kind of ridiculous. Right. But again, we're talking about the independent mom and pop station or store who's done this forever, and they're just not knowledgeable about it.
Right.
And that's where you come in, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. So sorry for the confusion at the beginning of this. I was just like going, well, what makes you any different than anybody I've ever used?
Right.
And the dual pricing is really the key.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Correct.
So you have this stuff here. I'm going to put this up on the what does this mean?
Yes, that is much like what I talked about with the auto repair center. So that, they'll do a sample, let's say 3 or 4 bays, they might do $100,000 a month in processing. Traditional, they would be under traditional processing. They typically, average customer is going to pay about $33,000 per year on that. With dual pricing, it's zero. For that kind of volume, we can get them down to $0, and they would pay. So they're saving themselves $33,000 profit, pure profit, by running through a dual pricing scenario.
I mean, that's crazy. You should be, man. This is a no-brainer to me.
Yeah.
What are the resistance? What are some of the things that you're dealing with?
Honestly, it's just getting in front of the right person is the biggest resistance. Once I've gotten in front of the right person, it's been a really good close. Maybe explaining my, gaining the trust and being able to properly explain it so you're not confused for 10 minutes. This kind of stuff helps.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's a large part of why I'm in a networking group, to be able to consistently explain what I do and why I do what I do. And that kind of talk helps me in my sales pitch. But that's the biggest resistance. Once I've gotten in front of the right people, it's been an easy sell. I'm saving people money. I'm not trying to charge them. People run away because they think, oh, this is just another credit card salesperson that I see once or twice a month, But once I get enough of the pitch out in the right way to the right person, I haven't lost many,
Well, I mean, I'm glad to hear that because, initially at the beginning of the podcast, I was kind of confused because I'm thinking, well, what's the difference between you and all the other guys that called me once a week trying to process my credit cards and debit cards, which used to irritate the living what out of me because they would call me incessantly. And nowadays it's emails, but you're offering something a little different. And that's why. And by the way, folks, Dan and I met at Ignite U 365, which is a local networking group here. Uh, if you want to know more about that, we meet a lot of different people there, a lot of business owners and a lot of entrepreneurial people, a lot of the same people offering the same business. But it's a great way to meet people and kind of present your business. So, Dan, would you agree?
I would 100% agree. It's been very helpful, and I'm got to meet you there. I got to meet,
right.
There's 2 or 3 different people, I mean, I've met several, but there's been enough of good connection with a handful of people that have made the whole thing worth it. I've only been there 3 months. So
I've got another comment in the chat. It says this is kind of like a paradigm shift where you have to kind of get the person to think a little differently. For me, it would be like, how would you not like to pay for processing fees?
Right.
I mean, that's the door that would be open to me. And I would, okay, tell me more.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So,
and so often in this industry, everybody that's out there selling it is selling it the traditional processing, which is, I can save you money, and so that when they're paying 2 3/4, okay, I'm going to pay 2 1/2. They're just knocking each other down, trying to save them money. And then, they raise their rates every once or twice, every couple of years, let's say. And then, I need to start looking at it again. You don't have to worry about that, raising rates constantly. Like, some companies, I won't dog some companies that are known for that. This scenario is you're not looking at your pricing constantly. You're saving yourself the headache and and I'm like, I don't want to sell it the traditional way. I'm not after, the traditional way is, I'm learning that I need to build the trust and build the relationship and the sales pitch. I never had to sell when I went into SEO. It would just kind of came up with me. So this is a whole new market, new way of doing things. So there is a relationship factor. I don't want to discount that, but to me, it's like, I'm saving you money,
Well, but in the short time that I've known you, I mean, you've been above board with just about everything. You have a high standard of integrity. I surmise that in the short period of time that we've known each other. So I think you'll be very good at this. And particularly when you say, how would you like to not have to pay processing fees? Right. Dan, we've got just about 10 minutes left in the program, 12 minutes. I want to put another slide up here. Explain this one.
Yeah. So this is a deja vu terminal example, where if you would enter $20 in the cash payment. And then the card price is automatically calculated to cover the processing cost. So card payment would be $20.80. You turn the terminal around and show the customer, here's your card payment or cash payment. If customer pays you, if it encourages them to pay you cash, you have the cash. If they end up not wanting to use the card, then the card gets run for $20.80.
And this is a perfect example of how the cash payer loses, because when they pay the $20, they're paying the markup anyway.
Correct.
So cash isn't really an advantage if what you're buying is marked up beyond. I mean, if it's marked up, you're paying for it anyway. So because it's got to cover the cost.
Correct.
And then with the credit card payment, that cost doesn't go to the merchant.
Correct.
Who still marked it up though.
No, now the merchant doesn't have to mark it up. So now the merchant can actually charge what makes sense for them, whatever their margin is. They don't need to mark it up an extra 3% above whatever their preferred profit margin is. And then they leave it onto the customer do I add the cost or not?
So they can offer a lower price.
Correct.
And not get hurt by it.
Exactly.
Okay, let me pull this off. Now, in the last few minutes of the program, give me your sales pitch and explain to me how you're going to help me. I own a shoe store, and everybody that comes into my shoe store, for the most part, they're paying with either a debit card or a credit card. And how are you going to tell me that I don't have to pay for those processing fees that the companies require?
Right. So Exactly what you just said. A lot of times I'll turn it into, I signed up a septic company that comes out to your house. And so that septic company, I was really excited. One of my first clients, and uh, and they're showing up to somebody's house. They have a $300 charge, and so they present the option of $300 or $360. Let's say whatever. It's not even that. $330. I'm not doing the math correct on 300. I like to leave it 1,000 or 1,040.
Yeah, an example.
Yeah, example 1,000 or 1,040. And now what's happening is customers are going to grab their check and writing him a check, and he's saving himself a lot of money on credit card processing because he's working with customers at their house where they typically might have cash or check. And so I'm not making as much. That's fine. I provided a great service for him. Before he looked at his statement, he didn't realize he was actually paying over 4% for his credit card charges, credit card and debit. Were amounting to it was almost 4.5%. And so it's taking a look. I will take a look at your credit card statement, see what's going on, and be honest. Hey, this is your best set. This is I mean, no matter what, if you don't want to pay credit card fees, you want to pass that along. Otherwise, we can still stay at traditional. I'm really not selling a ton of traditional because once people see this, they're like, yeah, dual pricing scenario makes sense. I can save oftentimes, it's $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 a year. It sells itself. It's just getting into the right person.
So if I understand you correctly, I'm still the customer here.
Yes.
If I write you a check for $300 or I pay you $300 now, you go away and we're done. If I use a credit card or a debit card, it's going to be $340. Is
Correct.
that what you're saying to me?
Yes.
Okay.
For the customer, yes.
For the customer. I'm the customer.
Yes.
So I can pay $40 more to use this card,
right,
or I can write a check.
Correct.
Well,
I'm
going to write
who's
a check.
Paying the fee? Right. So that's what a merchant's saying too. Why do I want to take the credit card? Why would I even take credit cards if it's costing me? Somebody has to pay that fee, right? To transact. And so merchants are saying, I don't want to pay that fee.
So then the customer pays the fee, but they get the perks of their frequent flyer. They get all those other things. Here, take my card. I'll pay you $400 more. I mean,
$40 more, but yes. And we've had, I have a used car dealer that, he said $15,000. The guy, put down as a deposit, Randy Fletcher, In and Out Auto Sales. He's in our group, and he's had people pay their deposit and pay that fee because they want to use their card. Sometimes it's the most convenient way to move money from point A to point B, but somebody's got to pay that, and there's absolutely no reason in the world a business should have to.
I agree. Okay, that to me is. I totally agree with that. Okay.
Right.
I mean, I'll pay for the phone bill to keep my business open. I'll pay for the lights, but I'm going to build in my cost of doing business. A percentage of that cost is going to be part of the pricing structure. Why not the credit card?
Right.
Why should I pay? I'm already paying enough to provide the service, and now I got to pay to get paid.
Right.
Okay. That's what attracted me to this whole conversation. Plus, you're a nice guy,
Well, and I enjoy being at your table when we talk because you always say, why do businesses have to pay the credit? Businesses should not have to pay that fee. And I always felt that way as a business owner for 22 years. I had a couple of clients that always wanted to use credit card, and it always just stung. And it was like, why? I'd always rather wait for a check because I'm not paying, my typical fee was $1,000 to $1,500. And I'd much rather wait for the check, in this scenario.
And you've been in business now on your own doing this, and you've had no complaints?
No complaints. Zero.
So there's really, of course, we live in Washington State where people just say, oh, okay, it's going to be $10,000 here, no problem. Okay, so in the last few minutes, I'll give you the last 4 minutes. What would you like to say to the audience?
I guess, my ideal clients are anybody that takes, honestly, $10,000 or more a month in credit card fees, in credit card processing. They process over $10,000 a month in credit cards. But I've worked with clients. I've signed up a couple new clients that only do 1,000 because I want to help small mom and pops just as much as the large guys. I know one of the first clients I ever dealt with in SEO was a small client. He was working out of his home. He now has 60 employees. You start somewhere. And I grew with him. He grew with me. We stayed together for 16 plus years. That's just the way I develop friendships and, do the right thing. It's kind of why I got out of SEO. I was having a harder and harder time doing the right thing, finding win-win situations for clients. Google's made it tougher. Now I'm diving into this because I think it's saving merchants. It's giving the power back to merchants that we should have never lost in the first place. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm excited about it. I'm excited. I'm learning the pitch, learning the talk. Thank you for letting me be on the show, Jeff. And
I'm the one thanking you for bringing this information to the public here. And also, you're a good guy. I mean, you're a good guy. That's what I know about you. Having you on the broadcast was a no-brainer to talk about how you can help the merchants. And I think merchants suffer a lot between the taxes, the regulations, and any little thing that'll save them money is worth talking about. And that's why we're talking about it on Let's Talk About It today. So I really do appreciate you coming on, and you're welcome to come back too. I'd love to know how you're doing 6 months down the road. And I'll ask you before we close out the show, how are you doing with this new business venture?
Just like starting up any business, it's a little slower than you expect and you run into hiccups. But I'm back to the minimum amount I need, forecasted out. I've done the Excel spreadsheet. I've looked into this. I'm back to what I need. Have needed to sustain this, to be in it in the long run. And I'm excited about that because, I wasn't sure for a handful of months if this is going to be the long term, but I am committed to doing this and providing the service. And it really is exciting. So.
And what's the name of your company and how can people reach you?
Adaptive Payment Solutions at www.adaptivepaymentsolutions.com. You have all the information there. First 2 months I was in business, I worked on the website. I ramped it up. I'm getting a little bit of upgrades, but I really tried to put all that information out there because that's what I know. So it might be better than a brand new company's website that you normally used to.
Yeah, I get it. Dan, thanks for coming on. Let's talk about it. I think you did a pretty good job explaining this. I thought we were going to go off the rails there for a minute because I'm like, different than those guys I was dealing with 20 years ago.
Right.
But you're presenting to the merchant a way to not have a $10,000 or even $1,000 charge for doing business.
Right.
Outstanding. There you go, folks.
All
That's
right.
the end of my broadcast. Dan Guay. And I had to ask him, how do you say your last name? And he said, put a W in there and you'll figure it out. Guay.
Guay, yep.
And you've got 3 beautiful daughters. You've been married forever. And I wish you the best with your business. We're going to stay in touch. I'll see you on a weekly basis. And
I'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah, in 6 months. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Good. And also, if you want to do some promo stuff on the podcast, just let me know. We can talk about that later, okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, there you go, folks. That's the end of my broadcast today. Again, I'm not sure what we're going to do next week. I'll be in New York, in my hometown. Believe it or not, I'm going to go back and do a whole bunch of plumbing in my mother's house to help my sister, who has taken over her home since Mom passed a couple of years ago. So keep me in your prayers, and we'll see you guys as soon as we get back. Okay, that's it. Have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye. Thanks, Dan.